Hi there, everyone. I wanted to come on and make a video regarding a topic that's coming up lately on my social media, especially on my Telegram, but also I've seen this being discussed elsewhere and even in attending local events, people are talking about this topic. So I thought I would make a video. I've been asked some questions about this topic as well on Telegram. And when I was asked the questions, I thought, I'm sure I have addressed this before. I'm sure the nine have addressed this before because the nine have spoken to me about this topic. The topic is that of non-player characters, or they're also known as backdrop people. I have been searching through my previous videos and I found that, yes, I have addressed this before. Back in 2020, we did a short Q&A where Cat's Magic just chose 3 questions at random from our email list. And one of the questions, in fact, the first question asked in that video was this question about backdrop people. So I responded to that question, and the question was a compound question with several parts to it. So I responded to that question. So I'm just going to share the first part of me responding to that question. So I replied to this back in the summer, I believe, of 2020. So only less than 3 years ago. Now, I listened back to what I said, and whilst my response is a good response, it's accurate, it is what the nine have told me, I'm not so sure as I explained it in a particularly easy to grasp way, as I'm looking at all the different perspectives, which is what is the most important thing here regarding this subject, non-player characters and backdrop people. The most important thing to know here is perspective and understanding the different dimensional viewpoints. And this is how I explain my response to that question. But I feel that perhaps now, almost 3 years later, I could perhaps explain this in a hopefully a clearer way. I did bump into someone recently at one of the local events who asked me about this question, and I spoke to her about that. And obviously, we don't have a lot of time to talk at these events. So I explained this in the clearest way that I could in the quick time that to be quick in the short time that I had. So I'm going to play this clip from the video back from 2020. And then I'm going to explain to you how I would perhaps change. I mean, the perspective I talk about is accurate, but I would change the perspective to something a bit simpler, that then, rather than looking at all the different perspectives, just really all you need to look at are 2 perspectives here to understand this concept. So I'm going to play this clip to you now. So this is me from 2020.
The first one here is from a lady called Karen, a global question regarding backdrop people.
Okay.
And she's put that she's got a general question that she doesn't think the nine have ever discussed before. It is regarding what Dolores Cannon calls the backdrop or background people. I don't know if you know about this stuff. The information that Dolores Cannon receives apparently is that there's lots and lots of people that aren't actually souls, but they're lower forms of energy that are sent here to help to play out and fill in our experiences. And they're basically like extras in a play or a movie. So she'd like to hear your perspectives on that. So I'll throw that at you and I'll mute myself. So that is the question. I'm muting myself now. Over to Magenta.
The backdrop people that Dolores Cannon talks about, I understand what she means. So what the nine was saying to me is there are multiple perspectives here about this. So when you're looking from the perspective of the soul that is moving through this reality on a journey of growth and expansion and individualization, that soul from several perspectives will incarnate into just one individual. So from that point of view, and whoever it is that's listening to this, you are that individual. So from that point of view, every single person is a backdrop person from your reality, because you are the only soul here. You are the only physical representation of the universe as you move forward in your journey. Obviously, there's another perspective where multiple souls, 7, 8 billion, however many, have all incarnated together at the same time, and they are all on their individual journeys at the same time, because you are the same soul undergoing similar journeys in different incarnations. But when it comes to linear time, you're all expressing yourselves in multiple ways, all in the same time. So from that point of view, there are no backdrop people, because you are every single person that's incarnated. So I've looked at two different perspectives across the spectrum. One where there's only one soul, every single person on this planet is a backdrop person from that perspective. The other perspective is where you are all souls incarnated in all these different forms simultaneously, and there are no backdrop people. Now, there are other perspectives within this spectrum. One of those perspectives is where soul groups incarnate. So you will have a perspective as a soul group. So that soul group could be 6 people or 12 people or 24 people or 108 people or 144 people, and it is done mathematically from the perspective of that one soul group. Everyone else outside of that soul group is a backdrop person. But then there are several soul groups that incarnate together. So you may have a soul group of 144, another soul group of 144, maybe 12 soul groups of 144. They will be the vehicles, the physical vehicles that move forward into this individualization as a soul journey, and everyone else will be a backdrop person for them. So this is about perspective. It's a correct presentation, and it is the presentation that most starseeds will experience, because most starseeds are part of these soul groups. I think really when you're looking at the third dimension, the most helpful way to describe this would be to say an awake and aware individual, whether they're a starseed, a truther, a light worker, they would be a soul of substance, if you will, holding that higher source frequency, moving along that journey towards individualization. And everyone who is asleep and not awake is a backdrop person. That would be one perspective. But the minute that person wakes up, they're no longer a backdrop person. They step into the fore and they become this presentation of source moving forward on the soul's journey towards individualization. So this is really about perspective. And if you limit yourself to one perspective, as in, well, there are a certain amount of 100,000 or million people or a billion or whatever number you want to give that are all actual souls and everyone else is a soulless zombie, that is a little bit of a... it's a bit of a literal interpretation of this. So whilst this is true, one must look at multiple perspectives to fully understand what this means. This is basically what the 9 have told me about backdrop people. Okay, so as you will see what I mean, I'm looking at all the different perspectives. So as I said, only 2 perspectives are really needed here to explain this concept. It's addressed as backdrop people in that clip. As you will have seen, the question from Cat's Magic was originally related to the backdrop people from Dolores Cannon's material. But people are talking about this more and more and more. It's becoming quite a well-known, quite a much talked about topic, and it's usually referred to as non-player characters or NPCs. So how I would explain this now, 3 years on from that video, is you have the physical perspective, the 3rd dimensional perspective, and you have the higher perspective, the multidimensional perspective, So from a physical perspective, from the point of view of your incarnation, I know in the clip I said everyone's a backdrop person and you are not. That's true from the perspective that you are the only one here. So even though that's taking it from a physical perspective, you're still looking at that through a multidimensional viewpoint of that. What I'm going to do is explain to you the perspective of you actually living in your third dimensional reality. Not that you're the only one here, that you live within a reality of multiple different people, rather than the perspective where these are all you, which is true. Let's look at the physical perspective where all these people are not you. You are the only you. From that point of view, how I would explain this to give the most clarity is that everyone in your life that is meaningful, your family, your friends, people you've interacted with a lot, people you've known for many years, in that reality, none of those people are what you would call an NPC or a backdrop person. They're all people in the fore of your reality. And also celebrities you watch on television that you see regularly, people you listen to on YouTube or other videos, authors of books you might read, anyone that comes into your reality in a meaningful way. From that perspective of you living within the third dimension as a physically incarnated individual, none of these individuals would be backdrop people. What you could perceive as backdrop people there would be someone, if you're out and about, and there's someone literally in the backdrop of your reality, walking in the distance, someone you might walk past in a shop that you see for 1 second, people who are on the periphery of your life that you don't interact with. I mean, if you bump into someone and have a short conversation for 3 minutes and that person says something very profound to you, and you go away and you think about it, that person wouldn't be classed as a backdrop person. You could have an interaction with someone, and that interaction may seem like you were literally talking to someone who isn't there. Now, I know we have the whole juice agenda, and yes, that's related, but that's not really what I'm talking about here. I'm addressing the question about non-player characters and backdrop people prior to juice. I'll bring in the juice aspect of it in a minute. So you could meet someone who you don't have a meaningful interaction with, you talk to for a very short period of time, and it seems like there's no rapport there, that person wasn't really listening, almost as though they're on autopilot, speaking to you like an automaton. From the perspective of your reality, then that person, the one in the distance that you don't meet, the person you interact with in this awkward, robotic way, that could be seen as a non-player character in the reality that is your life, and in the reality that is your experience of your life. But if you only take that perspective alone, which many people are doing, they're translating a multidimensional concept into 3D only, then whilst that may be true for the experiential journey that you undertake in your physical reality, that isn't true within the wider, larger perspective, because that person who you had this robotic interaction with for 2 minutes or 5 minutes, and they didn't seem to be listening, and they were just parroting robotically some kind of concept to you, or not even talking conceptually at all, from that person's perspective, you may appear to have been that. You may be not making any sense. You may be acting as though you're surreal and beyond life and insane, even from that person's perspective, which is going to be very different. from that person's perspective, you wouldn't necessarily be a non-player character, but you might be someone that they would dismiss as relevant. And they could perhaps perceive you as a backdrop person because you didn't make any sense. What I'm trying to say is that on the grand scheme of things, as I said in the clip, when looking at the higher reality, not the reality where you're the only person here, the reality where there are, if you will, 7 billion or however many people are actually on the planet, no one from that higher perspective is a soulless non-player character. No one is a backdrop person. Every person is another version of you living out a different reality. But for the reality you are presented with from the perspective where you are the only one here, so I'll go into that now, everyone who comes into your life is there for you to go through your experiential journey as a physically incarnated individual. So those people that are meaningful to you in your interactions would be not seen as a non-player character because they are significant to you. Everyone outside of that would be seen as an NPC or a backdrop person. There's also the other reality, the other perspective whereby, as I said in the clip, you're the only individual here in incarnation. And everyone from that perspective is either an incarnated soul structure that's come from the same place as you. So let's say you are a soul going through the journey of individualization. You are a starseed or an awake, genuine, real soul. And so are these people that you know. And then there are these other individuals who don't behave like that, therefore they're not. That's another perspective you could take, which I mentioned in the clip. So that would be the perspective of everyone who's awake and able to talk about spirituality and truth and the hijack and how we go forward in that. And you can relate to them on that level. They would be like-minded individuals, and anyone outside of that is an NPC. So there are all these different perspectives that you can take it from. But I think the simplest way of looking at it is that everyone in your life who's meaningful, who you've had an interaction with in a meaningful way, or someone you are aware of as someone you watch on television or on YouTube, or someone you read their books, or even though you've never met them, these are all people that make up the structure of your experiential reality. And anyone outside of that is a non-player character in your personal universe. If you think of the NPC concept as being part of a computer game, if you see your own reality as the main player, it's just using those gaming terms to explain reality. Now, one of the things that the darker structures will do is take higher dimensional concepts, present them, infiltrate them through into reality as a hijack, and allow people to just translate them into third dimensional understanding. And then they will catch on to that and continue to present those concepts in a third dimensional way, deliberately to mislead, because they know that those concepts are multidimensional. So a lot of this is coming from a hijack, because there are people who are not ready yet to be able to understand these multidimensional concepts. And when you translate a multidimensional concept into a third dimensional concept, you get nonsense, you get a completely different picture, incredibly misleading, and lies, if you will, from the point of view of truth. Even though they're not really lies, they are simply incorrectly interpreted concepts and ideas. So that's what's happening here with the non-player character thing. People are talking about them as if, oh, there are people out there that don't really exist. They're just soulless people that are planted on this into our reality to just make up the numbers. So that is an okay viewpoint to have, as long as you also hold the viewpoint that that's not true from the higher perspective, that every individual soul, all 7 billion, 8 billion, 9 billion, however many people there are on the earth, all of those people are all aspects of you living out their lives, and all of them have a soul because they're you. You have a soul, so do they. That there are no soulless characters. As long as you can take both of these viewpoints into this, what the nine call bilocational consciousness or paradoxical consciousness. If you can do that, you will have such an advantage going through our life over the next several years, because everything is going to be needed to be looked at least bilocationally and paradoxically, and eventually multidimensionally, looking at 3 concepts, 4 concepts, multiple concepts, etc. But if you can only see one concept, if your brain cannot conceptualize 2 concepts, now is the time that confusion is going to reign for that person. And I'm not saying that to be nasty or derogatory or judgmental. That's how it's going to be, because we're in a bifurcated reality, and we have these higher dimensional frequencies coming into our environment, and our own DNA structure, our own inner aspects merge with the environment and become one with the environment. The information given to and from the environment runs through us as well. And that information is multidimensional, given where the planet is within the galactic realm right now. That's what's happening. So if we just take a concept like non-player characters in one way and try to decode the multidimensionality of this, and it's not a false concept, it's not a lie, it's not untrue, because there is a perspective where it's true. Because in your reality, those people that you never meet, who are living on the earth that you never meet, or people that you do meet that speak in this robotic way and make no sense to you, or don't seem to have any meaningful way of thinking or communicating, then you could see those people as backdrop people. You could see those people as non-player characters, because they are that in your personal reality. But from the viewpoint of looking down upon the earth at every single soul here, every single soul is part of that divine structure. They all are soul encased and soul vibrating individuals. So hold that concept about non-player characters if you want to, as long as you can take the other viewpoint. From the viewpoint of non-player characters and backdrop people, from the perspective only of the 3rd dimensional viewpoint, and you seeing them as backdrop people, if you only take that perspective, then that is false. That is misleading. That is totally incorrect and potentially dangerous. And the reason why it's dangerous is because this is the viewpoint that service to self structures hold, as in, as long as I exist and I am divine and I am a representation of source, God, creator, whatever word you want to use, as long as I exist and I am that, then it doesn't matter if others don't exist, because as long as I exist, I'm the only one. It's not an incorrect perspective, but it is not a service to others perspective. It's not the perspective a positively polarized soul with an open heart, expressing the heart, would take throughout their life. And it's not a perspective one can hold when living in a societal structure, or certainly a harmonious one. If you were to take that perspective, you'd have to be hidden away from that societal structure, because you simply wouldn't fit in with, if you will, the norm. All of that's been hijacked. All of that's been used to create a false system and an inverted system. So another way of putting this is to say that it's spiritual bypassing. It's making excuses for what you do. For example, if a service to self individual were to say it's okay for me to take this person's life force away. It's okay for me to do that. I'm trying to not use certain terminologies here. I'm sure you know why. It's okay for me to take this person's life force from them because they don't exist. I'm the only one that does. And whilst that perspective is true from one perspective, to take it as the perspective to justify why we do these things is spiritual bypassing. Am I saying that the service to self structure spiritually bypasses? Well, yes, from that point of view, they do. That's not how they would see it in their perspective. And I have done a video recently about the service to self perspective, and my new book, The Diamond Codex and the Quartz Key, new transmission from the Nine. They do talk a lot about the negative polarization and the service to self perspective, so that individuals who want to understand how that structure works and how those individuals think, it will help them to be able to know what they are not and therefore know what they are. It will help them to understand positive polarization and service to others far, far more. So whilst within the structure that they are in, they wouldn't see it as spiritual bypassing. There's nothing that would compute within the term spiritual bypassing to them, because that's the viewpoint they hold as reality. From the service to others perspective, from the positive polarization perspective, that is spiritual bypassing, and it is using a multidimensional concept as an excuse to behave in certain ways within the third dimension and not have any consequence or karma on that. Now, bringing in the juice, that's an added topic. But obviously there is now a different way of looking at non-player character and backdrop people perspective. And I feel that's the reason why it's coming to the forefront now in the spiritual and truth community awareness, because Juice has, in effect, in a way, created backdrop people and non-player characters because of the frequency that the juiced individual is holding. So without going into the whole thing about juiced individuals as opposed to non-juiced individuals, I've made tons of videos about this subject and brought forward as much information from the Nine that I have, and I've talked about it extensively, so I don't really need to go there. But what I can say is the perspective that juiced individuals are NPCs and non-juiced individuals are not, that could also be taken. It isn't exactly how it is, but because individuals who are juiced have had the natural organic cellular replication that happens normally deconstructed and reconstructed in a more of an artificial intelligence presentation, then that could be seen as an NPC because it's not an organic structure. There's the other aspect of this, which people are asking me: what happens when individuals are juiced, but they're still really wise and they're really talking spiritually and they're really creative? Well, AI can do that. AI can be that. That doesn't mean that that's operating from an organic place. It means it's operating from more of that AI replication that's taking place within the DNA structure. I will remind everyone, obviously, that we are talking about fiction here. We're talking about science fiction, and the novel that I'm writing with the help of people I connect with on social media and on Telegram. They're giving me ideas when they ask these questions for the novel, for the science fiction novel, which is science fiction and fantasy fiction. Thank you. So I just needed to pop that in there. So juiced individuals could be seen that way. So it's one way of explaining this perspective. There are so many ways of explaining it. But I think the best way to see it is what I said. Individuals who are significant to you. That would include juiced individuals as well. They're not NPCs if they're significant in your life, and those that are literally in the backdrop of your own personal life path, life structure, life experience are backdrop people. That is the better way to see it, and join that perspective with, from the higher perspective, there are no backdrop people. And it is so important to take that perspective, because that is also equally as true. There are no backdrop people. There are no NPCs. That they do not exist. They are not real or true. And for you to believe that is a hijack. Take that viewpoint as well. Both of these viewpoints that I'm saying, just 1 and 2, we don't have to look at all the different perspectives. That can be confusing for some people. For others, they follow along just fine with multidimensionality, and they're totally there on that that quantum or spiral way of thinking. But those two are the better, clearer ways of explaining it, to just take those two perspectives. So regarding the juiced individual, there are those obviously that have the ability to override it somewhat, as I've spoken about before. The 9 say the very rare few, which people do challenge all the time, and repeatedly say, oh, it's not the very rare few, it's far more, and it's everyone can override it. I'm going to have to continue to speak about what I am told. If you want to disagree with that, that's absolutely fine. I'm just telling you what I am told, and where I am in my trust of what is true. I'm very rooted and anchored in that. So that's the perspective I share. And that is that there is a very rare few number of individuals who are able to override this in more of an organic way. The majority of individuals who are juiced, who are still showing some kind of wisdom, spiritual awareness, or creativity, are either coming from pre-juiced memory, and remembering how they were, and that's just carrying on, and that could and potentially will change as they go forward, or it's coming from an AI structure which mimics. It's a mimicry structure. It's a mimicry of that which is organic, but that still doesn't change the fact that the cellular replication, what's actually happened is that the instructional codes within the cellular DNA becomes uniform. So each group of cells, and I don't have the understanding of biology to explain what I'm saying here, cellular biology, the cellular structure becomes uniform, and they all become the same, like a hive mind within the cellular structure. Whereas an organic individual, all the cells work in a different way, in tandem, as a unified whole, but more like an orchestra. So if you want to see it as music, in an organic individual, you have the harp, and you have the trombone, and you have the violin and the piano, and they're all playing together, but they're all different instruments. Whereas over in the juiced individual, it's just one instrument, probably like a synthesizer or something. But it's just one instrument playing the music, still playing music, but it's the same instrument in every cell. So it becomes uniform. The cells, as they divide, as they replicate, they mirror the last one. The cells clone themselves naturally inside, and that might be where people are saying, "Oh, those people are clones. Those people are non-player characters." They're using words to describe what is going on a cellular level. It doesn't mean the person is a clone. It doesn't mean the person is a non-player character. So there are lots and lots of misinterpretations of what is essentially a multidimensional concept. And unless it's taken with the full breadth of multidimensionality, it's going to end up being false. So if you've got someone saying to you, those people are non-player characters and those people are not, that is just, it isn't a lie, but it is deeply, deeply distorted because it's been interpreted in a third dimensional sense. You cannot interpret multidimensional concepts and multidimensionality just through 3D. If you do, you will come up with a lie. You will come up with nonsense. It won't make sense and it won't be true. And this is how the dark structure will target truth in the novel. This is how the overlords will target the truth-aware fairies and pixies and gnomes and elves by saying, oh, they believe this and they believe that and they're teaching this, and they'll take the multidimensionality right down to 3D and present it. Like somebody, you know, did that with me, wrote an article for a well-known magazine in America, and the title was Magenta Pixie says that the juice harms the soul. Well, I've never ever said that. And that was the actual title of an article that reached, well, however many people read this very well-known magazine, newspaper, and whatever in America. It's not true. The juice doesn't harm the soul. The soul is whole and unified and a perfect divine replica of source. So I would never have said, oh, it harms the soul. It's not a claim I would ever make. However, if you were to interpret the soul as meaning the structure of the human being and the human being's DNA or cellular replication, then you could interpret me as saying that. So the person who wrote that article and came up with that title, they weren't lying, because I've made it quite clear that the juice will detrimentally affect the cellular instructional replication, and the that will affect the persona of the individual. And I've spoken also about ascension and how that is affected on a linear level. So by looking at all of those things that I'm saying, one could say she's saying that the juice is going to harm your soul at a spiritual level. Yes, it's going to harm your spiritual journey from the perspective of the linear reality, because your soul from that viewpoint came here and incarnated in this cycle to go through ascension from that perspective. So that is an example of taking a multi-dimensional concept, making it totally 3D. From my point of view, it's not true. It isn't true that the soul is harmed by the juice. Ultimately, the soul cannot be harmed by anything. It's pure and it's infinite. Neither would I use those words to explain that, because I know how misleading that would be. However, I couldn't say that that individual is lying. What they've done is misinterpreted, and most likely deliberately. But I'm just explaining to you how important it is for us to use true communication now. And for the individuals who are coming into the truth community, coming into the spiritual community with third dimensional thinking, and there's many of them because they're waking up, but they haven't woken up to multidimensionality, or at least to dual thinking consciousness, paradoxical consciousness, and bilocational consciousness. They are going to interpret or try to interpret these multidimensional concepts into a third dimensional way, and no wonder they are confused. And you have teachers. That's what we're there for, to help you, to assist you in, not to explain the concept. We're not here to teach you the teaching or explain the concept. We're here to assist you in becoming multidimensional. We're here to assist you in being able to look at the dual consciousness, to bilocate with your thinking, to move into paradoxical understanding, spiralize your thought. That's what we're here to teach, not the teaching or the concept itself. It's the brainwave patterning, the matrix, the light body. That's what all that is. Multidimensionality is the light body. That's what we're here to teach. And then you have these infiltrators coming in that are deliberately teaching the distorted aspect. And so you have these people turning away from spirituality because they've been so confused and they haven't found the answers. So they will turn away from spirituality and certainly turn away from what they perceive to be the new age and end up targeting it and hating it because they didn't get the assistance and the help that they needed. And a lot of the spiritual teachers and new age teachers are very, very rooted in 3D concepts. That's incorrect. They're very, very rooted in 5D concepts in their teaching. That when someone comes in from a 3D perspective, that teacher that is 5D embracing and 5D thinking has interpreted everything in their reality from the 5th dimension and doesn't necessarily bring in the 3rd dimensional counterpart. So those particular teachers are unable to help the 3D individual because they don't know how to bring the 5D concepts and teachings and knowledge into 3D. So they have the 5D awareness, but not the 3D aspect as well. And unless you are embracing multidimensionality and the physical realm, you're going to get these concepts confused and muddled up. And that's what's happening. That's what's happening hugely right now. It's all part of the initiation humanity is going through. It's all part of the awakening. It's all part of the ascension, the collective learning. In that perspective, seeing everyone awaken, no one's an NPC there. No one is a backdrop person. From that perspective of the grand awakening, everyone has the capacity to awaken. There may be hijacking along the way. Juice is one of those hijacks. Those individuals don't make it through that awakening this time around. They don't make it through this cycle. They have to go do the cycle again. But the opportunity is there for everyone. And the hijacks are coming in, and we are here to navigate through that. And some of us fall by the wayside by falling for the hijack, and others do not. And there isn't any judgment there. It's where they are as a soul on their journey. So I hope that's kind of brought into clarity the whole non-player character thing, because when people ask me questions, are non-player characters real? Are backdrop people real? Well, I have to say, well, yes and no, as I say to so many questions. And Cat's Magic teases me all the time. He said, don't ask Magenta a question, she'll say yes and no. But you know, that's it's something that's funny and you can laugh at it, but it's true. It is yes and no. Sometimes it's yes and yes, and I guess sometimes it's no and no, but a lot of the time it's yes and no, because you are looking at different concepts. So I hope that's explained it. And I know that I've probably discussed the same sort of thing that I said back in 2020, but I didn't feel I'd given enough clarity there. Now, on this topic of non-player characters, some people did ask me some questions. So I'm going to just go through some of these questions, and also the comments from the Aware community on my social media group, mostly on my Telegram group. So the first question was, Magenta, can you ask the 9 if indeed 75% of the population are soulless non-player characters? My answer is no, they are not. So I took this from the most truthful perspective when living within this reality. No, they are not. No incarnated individual existing on this planet at this time is soulless. So everyone has a soul. There's no soulless individual. As I've said, I mean, this individual asked about 75%. Well, I don't think you could give a percentage to the amount of individuals that you don't ever meet and that you don't ever see, you don't ever interact with, or you interact with in this robotic, meaningless way. I would have said it's probably higher than 75%. So, or maybe it is around 75%, but that's a meaningless percentage, because if I were to say yes to that question, if I would say yes, it's true, that's actually true, and you started to think 75% of souls on this planet are soulless and they're NPCs. Oh my goodness, that's actually quite a scary, frightening scenario. And it's something that's quite dark and could send people into fear. It isn't true at all when it comes to looking at all the souls on this planet. They're all souls, they're all you. They're all you. There is only one soul, and every soul incarnated is another version of you. So that's not true, but I have explained to you the perspectives where you could take that as true, because it's not really utterly 100% false, but it is when you're giving it percentages. So what I went on to say is non-player characters are a metaphor. So yes, you could see NPCs as a metaphor in the sense that they're the individuals you don't interact with. They're the individuals you don't ever meet. They're not in your reality. And from the perspective of you experiencing this dimension, your experiential journey that you take with you beyond this lifetime, they're not part of that for you and your reality. And because you are the only one here, they don't exist from that perspective, because if they did, they'd be in your reality. So that's another way of looking at it, and it's not untruthful, but it is if you are trying to interpret it just within the 3D perception. So NPCs are a metaphor, and an ungrounded one at that. It's very ungrounded from this 3D perspective to see people as NPCs, and it's so false from that perspective. To explain the subjective awakening experience of the individual, whereby others no longer in their new dimension can be perceived as NPCs. So that's coming from the perspective where you've woken up spiritually and you're awake and you can see all these other people that are awake, but all the people still asleep, juiced or otherwise, are NPCs. Again, it's a perspective where you could use that term if you wanted to, but in the higher truth, in the absolute truth of reality, it becomes false and ungrounded. And I went on to say, this is no different to looking at your arms or your skin or your face and believing you are in a whole new body. Subjective truth interpretation for awakening. To stay grounded, you must anchor the 3D logic alongside the expansive new awareness of awakening. NPC observation falls into this category. If you believe it in its entirety, then you are not grounded. So what I mean by looking at your arms or skin or face and believing you are in a whole new body, when you are awakening into the light body, your cells are regenerating in a different way and a faster way than someone who's not awakening into the light body. I mean, everyone is on some level, but many people are blocked and deliberately blocked. But let's just say we're looking at the individuals who are moving into the light body. So your body is regenerating itself at a far faster, quicker way than it would have done 10 years ago, 30 years ago, 100 years ago. So one could wake up, and I actually did this back in 1993 when I was going through my awakening, because we were going through these dimensional shifts and timeline jumps. And so I would be aware of when I was going through a timeline jump, and I would be aware of when I was in a different timeline. And when you're in a different timeline, you're obviously in a different body, because it's not the same body you were in the previous timeline. This is all multidimensional quantum thinking, and it's going to send you into an ungrounded state if you start believing it as absolute fact within the third dimension. I learned this the hard way by experiencing it. So I woke up one morning and I'm looking at my arm and thinking, oh my goodness, this is not my arm. This isn't my skin. This is completely new skin. I don't even recognize it. Now, from a higher dimensional point of view, I would have been correct. And it's happening to all of you that are ascending. I would have been correct. And I'm sure many of you have had this experience if you're in that place of going through ascension and moving into the light body. This isn't my skin. It's all new. I don't even recognize this body. It might look the same, but it's completely different. Now, that's fine if you can think, well, that's because I'm going through an awakening. I'm moving into multidimensional consciousness. I'm aware of the timeline jump. I'm aware of the fact that I've switched into the consciousness of an alternate aspect. That's all completely normal in ascension. Cool. Okay. If I take that perspective, I'll be fine. But I didn't back then in 1993. I'm like, wow, this is not my skin. This is not my arm. This is not my hand, And so that you become ungrounded. You walk around for a day just looking around like, I don't even belong in this reality. My skin is so different. These aren't my nails. This isn't my hair. And you walk around in a daze. You can't go shopping. If somebody comes up to you and tries to speak to you, you'll look at them like, oh wow, you're like a different person. It's all true, but if you act that way in 3D, you've lost your anchor. That's not what we're here for. And the nine would teach me. I was with White Spirit at the time, and he would teach me. He'd let me wander off into this weird way of thinking where I'm completely ungrounded. And then he would explain to me that whilst the concept and the experience was accurate, it will not serve me in the third dimension. And then he was saying, now you are to go to the shop, you are to purchase some food, go to see a friend, sit down and talk to them, watch this program, read this book. And I would then have to come right into 3D and forget that and think, this is my skin, this is my arm, this is the same body I've had since I was born. And that was my training. I was experientially trained in this on a day-to-day living, as many of you will also be. So the non-player character thing is the same thing. Looking around like, oh, that person's a clone, that person's an NPC. Oh, I'm walking around the shop, they've all got no soul. You could come home and actually say, do you know what, I went to Tesco today, or Walmart if you're in America, and no one had a soul. Like that 90% of people in there had no soul. Oh, it's not that you're wrong in the way that you are perceiving people in their stage of awakening or in their juiced state or whatever perspective that you are perceiving within your early awakening. It's not wrong. But what it is seriously ungrounded. Seriously ungrounded. And if you are not careful, if you do not get back on your anchor, then insanity ensues. Now, I'm not saying people are going to go insane, because right now, the awakening is what is going on, and the hijacking is there to push people off the edge. There's a great deal of support from the higher dimensions and from the guidance system to prevent that actual fragmentation of mind. But some people aren't grounded enough to be able to cope with the awakening, and so awakening becomes a very, very frightening and scary experience, as opposed to a wonderful, blissful, heart-opening experience that's the best experience you've ever been through. And that's the bifurcation. We're going through a bifurcation, and those people that are moving into a scary awakening, whether it's hijacked because of juice or whether it's for some other reason, they're not able to create the charge needed to go through ascension this time. They will not make it in this cycle, and they will have to go back and do the cycle again. That's what the nine call regenesis. And they move back into a different form. The charge is there because of joy and love and bliss, because you're walking around thinking, this is the best life I've ever lived. This is the best time of my life. I feel amazing all the time. And I'm so grateful and so thankful for everything that I have and everything I experience. That creates charge, excitement, joy. That's the charge. And it's literally an actual charge of light, of fire, of plasma in the cellular makeup that those in fear can't have. And so you can see where the hijack comes in. So this relates to everything I've been saying for months and months and months and years, in fact. So to stay grounded, you must anchor the 3D logic, the left-brained logic, alongside the expansive new awareness of awakening. So people who are awakening, if they can go to the supermarket and think, oh, wow, everyone's walking around with their trolley, they're all soulless, they're all clones, they're all AI NPCs. Wow, I can see it. Then that's great. You are in a state of awakening. The fact that you can see that you are different to these individuals in some way. Now come to the other perspective. They're all the people in Tesco. They're all human beings. They're all aspects of the divine, just like me. They're in different stages of awakening. And there were, say, 200 people in the shop. I went shopping, I came home, here's my food. Ground yourself back down into reality. And the last thing that you should be doing is going online and teaching and telling people everyone's an NPC. Ooh, everyone's a clone. All these people have got no souls. Wow. That's not what you do as a spiritual teacher, because you've got all these newly awakened people that you're sending into some kind of fear. That you're not ready to teach when you're in that place. You are not ready to teach. And sadly, there are people in this situation now online, and they are saying these things. And these are often the ones that get angry with people like me and other actual multidimensional thinking teachers. They don't understand what we're saying. They want to be able to understand, but they don't and they can't. So they dismiss that as nonsense, as crazy. So they're on the other side, and therefore they reject, and they will then reject all spiritual teaching, all new age, what they think is new age, because they're having a bad experience, because they're listening to someone talk that's not making any sense to them. So that person comes across as crazy. So we have to be aware. This is so important, because this is our reality right now, especially within the spiritual community. But outside of the spiritual community as well, it's there in every concept. What we're being given in the, on the media, what we're being told, this has happened in this country, this happened over here, this might happen in 6 months, we might do this, we might do that. The questions I get every day, Magenta, is this true? Is this real? Is this really going to happen? I heard this, I heard that. This new information, a mixture of actual organic information and constant hijacks are coming into everyone's reality, whether they're awake or not. So one has to be aware of the level of insanity that's going on. And I think that's too strong a word. However, perhaps it fits. I would say the level of ungroundedness is profound. And the only way you can possibly help anyone, you don't have to be making videos like I am. You don't have to be out there doing talks or anything like that. You can just help the people in your vicinity in whatever way you can. But the only way you can help anyone is to be grounded down into the physical reality, as well as embracing the higher dimensions, which is what every spiritual teacher has been telling us since however many years ago. And now it's never been so important as it is right now, because people are losing that anchor and they're waking up before they're ready. That's because we're in the end times, planetary completion, and they didn't wake up before, so they're waking up right at the last minute. Luckily, some people are doing it. They're waking up and they are staying balanced. Great. Others are waking up and they're lost in a sea of confusion, but they seek out help and they are able to integrate. Others can't. So this is what's happening right now. So I just want to read some of other people's comments about this, because there were some really good comments. So one person said, for me, the term non-player character, or NPC, takes into account parallel universes. We're each at the center of our own holographic version of source, and all the other people are also equally centers of their own holograph. All true. Absolutely correct. It just appears that their active version of their holograph is not in co-creation with our actualized version of our holographs at this time. So this is another way of explaining this concept. This is someone else wrote this. I didn't write their name down, sorry, but thank you to whoever wrote this on my Telegram, because it is a really good explanation. So just as we use the terms parallel universes, and some people will go to another timeline, it's equally valid to use the term non-player character. So I think this is the same sort of thing that I was saying about jumping into another timeline and seeing myself as not me and not recognizing who I was, because I'm not the same person I was in the other timeline. And yes, it does take into account parallel universes, and it's another way of looking at this. I think people are using the term NPCs in different ways. And then this person went on to say, in truth, at another run of the game, those NPCs will become the players. And that's what's important. Those NPCs will become the players by integrating our parallel lives into their activated identity structure. And we will be the NPCs in their version of the game. So this is what I was saying. You could meet someone and have a chat with them for 3 minutes, and they're really sort of speaking like a robot, speaking in this soulless way. And from your perspective, they're an NPC because they don't have any animation. They're just a backdrop person, a background person put there to fill in for your reality. And when you go forward or in time or jump to these parallel realities, they will be the centralized player in their hologram, in their own bubble. And you will be the NPC to them. That's the same thing as saying, when someone's talking in a multidimensional way and you don't understand them, you might come across as being have no reaction and be quite soulless and robotic. But what you might be thinking as the actual individual experiencing that is, that person's insane, that person's crazy, they're just like not making any sense. So they're the NPC because they don't make sense, they don't compute in their computerized reality, their holographic reality. That person's the NPC. It's all about perspective, as I said in the clip. The player programmer of the game will rerun the game as many times until all the NPCs have become activated players. This person's explaining the ascension process. You know, the ones that can't be active players will go through regenesis or recycle through and play the game again. We've all played the game, we win the game, we go on to play a new game, but they couldn't get through the game. They were only NPCs in that game. Then they do the game again and become an active player, and this time they win the game and go on to play another game. And it's this domino effect of ascension. This is why, to make the claim Magenta Pixie says the juice harms the soul, is so misleading, because everyone ascends eventually. We've all come here now to ascend at this time, in this end times, in this cycle, but some of us won't make it. We'll do it again. But in the grand scheme of things, there's no time. Everyone ascends and no one's soul is hurt by juice. However, to actually make the claim, the juice will not hurt your soul and the juice will not affect your ascension, to make that claim is dangerous in the novel. Because then the Fae will think, and you could be instrumental in making them think that way when you make the claim, the Fae will think it's okay to take the juice. Because it's not going to hurt me, it can't hurt my soul, and it can't hurt my ascension, because everyone ascends and everyone's soul's divine. But on a linear level, that's not true. That's not true on a linear level. So that's why this is so important, to embrace the linear physical and the multidimensional antimatter non-physical. You have to have both. And that's what the Nine's teachings are all about. It's not the teaching. It's the ability to see multidimensionally. That's ascension. Ascension is multidimensionality. starts with your consciousness. It starts with the way you think, and the body follows. So yeah, this person's just coming from a different angle, and you know, again, equally as truthful. And this person went on to say, likewise, we can only actualize ourselves by including their identity, not their current behavior, into our own grander self-identity. I mean, I could go into this much deeper and fully explain what this individual is meaning, but these aren't my words, they're someone else's words, so I'm just presenting them as someone else's perspective, but I'm not going to go into the analysis of what they're saying here. They're saying the same thing that I'm saying, but using a very different way of explaining it. And then they went on to say, I like to remind myself that the term NPC is made us to look up, not to look down. In a timeless creation, who can say one run of the game preceded another? That's so important. Who's to say in the timeless creation that our ascension actually occurred before the person who doesn't make it this time around? They could ascend before us. There is no time. So everyone who doesn't make it through the ascension, everyone who's going through regenesis, could actually ascend before us from that perspective. But within a linear reality, that becomes confusing. And within a linear reality, that isn't the case. We are ascending first before they are. But that's only in the linear reality. Again, so important to take both concepts. And then this person went on to say, so just think the NPCs are already activated in a previous version of the game, and it's you that's catching up. That avoids the traps and the dangers of using the term. So thank you to whoever wrote this. I think I've got an idea who it was, but thank you for writing this. And that's really important. It's another way of helping you to not be ungrounded in this. Just think, if you think they're NPCs, oh, I've been to Tesco and everyone's walking around and they're all NPCs and they're all soulless. They are already activated in a previous version of the game. You're the one catching up. They've come here to help you by acting like an NPC. This will allow you to realize that everyone has value. Everyone is equally as important as everyone else. So we have the linear and the non-linear, and we must see both. My latest book, The Diamond Codex and the Quartz Key, I've got a copy here. This is a hardback copy of the book there. The Diamond Codex and the Quartz Key explains the linear and the non-linear, the multidimensional and the third dimensional, antimatter and matter. This is explained in multiple different ways in this book all the time. And it is the core teaching, even though there are multiple different questions asked of the 9 and multiple different questions are responded to by the 9. The ultimate explanation is that of the linear and the non-linear. And the 9 use some really well, I personally feel some really good metaphors and different explanations to explain this. So yeah, that's my latest book, which has been out for sale now for about a month, and I've been working on it on and off for 4 years actually, with the bulk of the work being done in last year. And with quite a bit done the year before as well. So it's the longest work I've done. And I shelved it and then wrote Lessons from Living Lemuria and the Black Box Program and the Rose Gold Flame as Antidote. I wrote those after I started this book, and then went back to the material because it was so deep conceptually that it took me a while to integrate the concepts coming in. And then Cat's Magic designed the wonderful cover, the beautiful cover. So yeah, if you're interested more about this particular concept, which I've spoken about so many times, if you are interested in other ways to assist you into getting into that multidimensional thinking, and just the 2 to start with, you don't have to think of multiple different perspectives immediately, just those 2 perspectives. Now someone else also said, a completely different person, and this is a different way of speaking about this subject. Someone said, Magenta, the term NPC is originally from computer games, and it refers to characters that can't be controlled by the player. Yes, well, I knew that, but I think that that's important, because a lot of people were writing, what's an NPC? What's a backdrop person? Is it the same thing? What's a non-player character? And if you haven't been a gamer, I mean, my children, certainly two of them, are dedicated gamers. So I kind of knew what an NPC was. So my reply was, in this context, so looking at the context of the NPC referring to a character that can't be controlled by the player. So this is an NPC that's gone rogue, if you will, or that's different, and it's not controlled by the game. So taking that metaphor, this is what I said. In this context, this would mean the Starseeds, as in they're not controlled by the player, which is the dark manipulation within the systems. There's another way of looking at it. So many different ways of looking at this as a philosophical concept, using computer language, gaming language, AI language, or backdrop people is a different way of saying the same thing. This is another concept, another way of looking at it. It's got different angles here. So when you hear somebody talking about NPCs, what are they meaning? What perspective are they coming from when they use the term? And that's another thing that you need to look out for when you listen to people speaking. What are they meaning by the words they're using? They might be meaning something completely different to what you would think of, like soul, spirit, ascension. What do people mean when they use those terms? Different people mean different things, and it's the same with NPC. So in this context, that would mean the Starseeds, as in they're not controlled by the player, as in the dark manipulation within the game, or it could mean cut off from spirit, as they cannot receive guidance from their higher self or oversoul. So that would be individuals still in 3D, individuals who are juiced, as I've already covered. It seems those in the truth community that use this metaphor are referring to individuals that are not real, are soulless. That's the general use of this term. These individuals, from that perspective, in the way that this term is being used, they would be referring to individuals that do not matter in the grand scheme of things. They don't matter in the game. They're NPCs. They're backdrop people. They're not important. That's how they're meaning it. Not all of them, but that seems to be the general meaning. And that is not only an ungrounded perspective, but a potentially dangerous one. So I hope I've explained this, as I've had lots and lots of questions about NPCs and backdrop people. So I wanted to give a really thorough explanation of this topic. So yes, thank you so much for listening. I hope that's assisted you in your understanding of this topic, and not just of this topic, but of multidimensionality, or bilocational consciousness, paradoxical consciousness, taking two viewpoints, two perspectives simultaneously, equally, and understanding and embracing both of those concepts equally in your life. I hope that's assisted you, because if you can do that, you really have a gift. And that gift is your shield and your sword as you go forward. So if you really feel that you don't have that yet, I would suggest that that's the number one focus for you in your practice, is to work out how to take two seemingly opposing viewpoints, or two different opposing perspectives, or even just different perspectives that don't appear opposing. Can you hold two perspectives in your mind simultaneously? If you can, this is your sword, this is your shield as you go forward. So yeah, thank you very much for listening, and I will be back with more videos. Thank you. Bye. I am just so happy to be able to announce to you that my new book is available. The Diamond Codex and the Quartz Key, accessing the accelerated Stargate system through crystalline transformation of the genetic code. What does it mean to transmute one's DNA from carbon-based to crystalline within the context of spiritual enlightenment and physiological evolution? Practical templates for photonic light gene expression, alchemical unification, and light body activation are provided within this channeled transmission, delivering this codex at a time within humanity's awakening and expansion when synchronicity is abundant. The mysteries of the accelerated Stargate system as an intelligent living infinity structure call the starseeds of Earth to remember why they are incarnated here and what they came here to do. The downloads, epiphanies, and realizations that will organically come to each starseed as they immerse themselves within this sacred text are catalysts for those memories. Introducing Dreamwalker, the story, presented through my interdimensional dialogue with the monadic light structure that is the white-winged collective consciousness of 9. This book has been such an absolute delight and joy to transcribe from the 9, and I truly hope you enjoy reading it. Available in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle.